Welcome to Jocz Productions. Today we're doing a deep dive into the process of analyzing documents and how I recommend you should keep track of all the 7 million different things you need to do in order to earn points on the rubric. As I walk you through the different documents, I recommend you hit pause and try the analysis process yourself. And when you're ready, or you want to wave the white flag, go ahead and hit play, and I will walk you through how I might use these documents to answer the prompt right here. Some last words before I begin.
You will get better at this.
You know the old saying, practice makes perfect. But remember, nobody's perfect. What's up with all these mixed messages? Sometimes you will get a prompt or a set of documents that will completely throw you off. The key to being successful at the DBQ is internalizing the process, knowing all the steps you need to complete, and then executing. So practice, practice, practice. With that being said, let's get it going. And a quick reminder what the prompt is we are trying to answer and the different parts of the prompt, and of course, the time period we are focusing on. Here is our first document. Oh, it's our first document. And like I said, pause and try out the process. As you read, if it helps, mark up the text. Before reading, check the sourcing. You most likely know John Smith. The date 1624 does reveal this is after the starving time and the colony being a hot mess. And since it's from John Smith, we might get the perspective from the colonial elite. Basically, this document is about how difficult life was in Virginia. Bunch of folks died. There's a desire for gold which consumed many of the settlers. And John Smith also mentions some commanders were not exactly great leaders, and of course goes on to mention his role in helping out the colony. Now while I'm doing all this stuff, I'm going to say this once. You don't need to worry about summarizing the entire document. In fact, you will not summarize the document in your actual essay. Chances are you won't even write this stuff out in the margins. Early on though, it's a good practice to jot a few things about the document as you read it. So how does this document connect to the prompt? And this is what you're actually going to be doing in your essay. What does the document do to help you answer the prompt with a historically defensible claim? And this document does reveal the profit motivation for the colonization of the Chesapeake region. The settlers came here looking for gold, looking for money, looking for profits. Since this is the first document, we can't really group it with any other documents, but we do know it reveals the motivation behind the settlement of the Chesapeake region. So we're going to want to keep that in mind when looking at other documents. Now, if you look at the rubric, you only need a few pieces of outside information to get the outside information point, but it is a good practice to think if there are any additional historical details that could complement your analysis of the document and help you support your thesis. The document does not explicitly mention the starving time or how John Smith helped the colony get through some tough times with his "you don't work, you don't eat" policy, or how tobacco really saved the colony by providing Virginia with a way to make money. If you use this outside information, can get the point if you use it in a way that directly connects to your argument and addresses the prompt being asked. Remember, for the extended analysis portion, you should aim to do any one of the HIPPs for at least 4 different documents. You only need to do it for 3 documents, but it's better to be safe than sorry. One way to get the HIPP analysis point would be to analyze the point of view and or purpose of the document. Since it's a document from John Smith, it is from the perspective of one of the leaders of the colony who established strict rules to ensure the colony's survival. Smith may have been influenced by his desire to paint himself in a favorable light back over in England by writing his account of the history of Virginia. When doing your HIPP analysis, you must connect your analysis to its relevance to your argument or the prompt. The information about the point of view or purpose of the document would be relevant since it demonstrates a difference between the profit motives behind the founding of Chesapeake versus the founding of the New England colonies. Next up is document 2. Pause if you want to read it over. When looking at it, John Winthrop, he's one of the founders of the New England colonies. He is a Puritan, and this document was created before his arrival to Massachusetts. Before even reading the document, you might ask yourself if this may provide us a glimpse into the motivation behind colonization of the New England region. And this document is Winthrop talking about the importance of the Massachusetts Bay Colony working together to create a city upon a hill that will serve as an example to the rest of the world. How does it connect to the prompt? You know, the New England settlements were motivated by religion, the importance of community, and since it was written before his arrival, perhaps it reflects some planning for the colony, which seems like a very different experience than what happened over in Jamestown. Now that we have more than one document, we could start thinking about the relationship between the different documents, whereas document 1 demonstrated the motivations behind colonization of the Chesapeake, document 2 reveals the motivation behind settlement of the New England region. Thinking back to the prompt, this seems to be some solid evidence as to the difference between the two regions, namely different motivations behind colonization. Now, you don't have to provide outside information for all the documents or even most of the documents, but once again, it's good to train your brain to think about what other historical evidence can help your analysis and defense of your thesis. You may want to bring in the town hall meetings in the New England region were intimately tied to church membership, and they, along with things like the Mayflower Compact, were the start of early democratic institutions in North America. For this particular document, I want to show you two different types of HIPPO analysis you could do, but remember, you only need to do one for a minimum of 3 documents.
But really, try to HIP at least 4, because you might make a mistake on one of them.
If you were trying to do historical context, you could point out the rise of religious dissent against the Anglican Church in England and the rise of separatist communities such as the Pilgrims and Puritans led to groups seeking to set up a colony in the New England region. This background is relevant because it speaks to the reasons for the motivation of the colonization of the New England region. Or you could examine the purpose of the document, which was Winthrop outlining in vivid detail why this Puritan colony was being created in the New England region. Once again, make sure you connect your analysis to the relevance of your argument and the prompt you have been given. Document 3. Early sourcing doesn't reveal a whole lot. We got a list of people headed for New England. The date of 1635 does tell me this is not the first group of people headed to the region, because remember, document 2 was dated 1630, so I'm assuming that by 1635, John Winthrop and his crew have made it to North America. And what we have in document 3 is a list of families coming to the New England region to establish a permanent settlement. This document connects to the prompt because it shows a diversity of settlers who went to the New England region. You have families, a diversity of skills, professions, ages, and it demonstrates they sought to establish a permanent religious settlement. The relative even distribution of men and women will ensure population growth. You might want to ask your parents why this would be the case. I'm not your health teacher. And the variety of skills and professions would ensure this colony would be stable and a self-sufficient community. In terms of organizing our evidence, document 3 reveals not only some additional insight into the motivation behind colonization of the New England region, they have ministers on board, but it also shows us who actually came to the area, and this may be relevant. I would probably skip adding additional outside information into my analysis, but if I want to include something relevant, you could see a possibility right there. And likewise, I could skip doing an extended analysis with this document, but you can see a way that historical context might be used effectively in advancing your argument for this prompt. Next up, we got document 4. This document, we have a list of people going to Virginia. Remember, Jamestown was founded in 1607, so these people are arriving to a colony that had been around for a cool minute. And this list not only demonstrates that it was largely men headed to the Chesapeake region, but also there was a lack of diversity in skills, genders, ages in the region as well. In other words, in the Chesapeake region, this document is in sharp contrast to document 3. We see very different people going to the Chesapeake region than there were going to the New England region. And in thinking about the prompt, perhaps not only motivation for colonization, but also the types of colonists who came to each region will help explain the differences in development by 1700. Some outside information which may help in your analysis might be tobacco was the cash crop of Virginia that drove many settlers to come to the area, hoping to acquire land and wealth. And for these types of documents, I typically tell students to avoid an intended audience, point of view, purpose. Typically, students say super general things like the intended audience was people who wanted to know who was on the ship headed to Virginia in 1635, or the point of view was from the perspective of a Virginian. There is not enough information about this document to really answer those questions with enough depth that would get you the point. For this type of document, historical context is always the safer bet. For example, you could elaborate how this particular document is a list of people headed to Virginia well after the starving time and events such as Powhatan's War. And if you go on to say these men are searching for wealth, oftentimes arriving as indentured servants, you would definitely be analyzing the historical context while also showing the relevance to the argument about motives and the types of colonists who arrived in the Chesapeake region. Document 5. There's not a whole lot of information to do any meaningful initial sourcing, but the document is a map of the New England region. It shows a town hall, it has a school, family farms, a church. And since we saw in document 2 and 3, the New England colonies were colonized for religious reasons by people with diverse skills, professions, ages, etc., it would make sense that they would settle in a tight-knit community like we see in document 5. Schools would be important part of the community so colonists could be literate so they could read the Bible. We already know how much they love their churches in the New England region. As for outside information, you could bring in how Harvard was the first university in North America and was founded in the New England region to train ministers. This could tie in nicely once again to the motivations behind settlement and the development of the New England region. And this is another type of document I would stick to historical context if I was to use it as one of the documents for the extended analysis. There's simply not enough information about the document to properly address intended audience, point of view, or purpose. And finally, our last document, document 6. This is a document from Nathaniel Bacon, leader of Bacon's Rebellion. In it, we see Bacon condemning the wealth in the hands of a few and the protection of native people by the colonial elite. This is a great document to examine how the two areas developed into two distinct regions. Document 6 shows class resentment in colonial Virginia against the planter class and anger over a lack of land and protections against native people. It connects to motive and types of people who came to the region. And this document contrasts with the development of community we see in the New England region, as seen in document 5, and reinforces the views in document 1 of individual pursuit of profit driving colonial development in the Chesapeake region. Now, a quick word of warning about outside information. You might be tempted to get into a whole paragraph about Bacon's Rebellion, all the details about the causes, what went down during it, and of course the outcome. But remember, outside information should only be used as it is relevant to the prompt in advancing your thesis. Do not turn this into an essay about any one document. You could bring in the fact that indentured servants were the primary labor source in colonial Virginia, which will lead to the development of class division. You can even bring in how the growth of African slavery will increase following Bacon's Rebellion, which will also make it distinct from the New England region. And there are a lot of different ways you could successfully integrate your HIPPO analysis into your response. On the right, you could see a few examples how you might go about doing this. So that's pretty much how I recommend you look at the documents, especially early on when you're just getting started with the DBQ. In our next video, we're going to actually write the essay. I'm going to show you what this whole thing will look like once it comes together in an essay that'll get you all the A-push street cred in the world, and more importantly, will get you that college credit. Thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day. Peace.